If you've saved money and you know that you can take the leap, you will be okay. Say you were working for a little bit in the morning or a little bit at night. Majority of the time, that's not your prime time. When you get that 8 hours back to like work on like what you truly love or like what you're taking the leap towards, everything changes.
Welcome, everyone, to the Road Less Traveled Show. This is a show about people that were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
And I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we're so pleased to have Suzy Sevier and Michael Barnhart. Welcome, folks. Glad you're on.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Bill. We're really excited to be on the show.
Yay.
Absolutely. Well, Michael and Suzy, thank you again so much for being on the Road Less Traveled Show. Can you tell us a little bit about your backgrounds, what career you started in, and how long you were in those paths?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So for me, currently, I was, or currently still am, active duty US Air Force, and I've been in the Air Force for over 17 years now. Kind of got my dream job finally, and the Air Force was just teaching back at the Air Force Academy. So I was doing that before where we are currently. I was teaching genetics and molecular biology and with just a master's degree. But they want me to continue teaching, so I sent me to get a Ph.D., and that's how Suzy and I are actually in Cambridge, England right now. Wow. I'm wrapping up a Ph.D. right now, writing as we speak, or as during this current time.
Not during the podcast.
Not during the podcast. But,
so it's dissertation time, huh?
Yeah, it is dissertation time. Yeah. Gotcha. So I'm writing everything up now, and we finished this year. So looking forward to that. But yeah, my background in the military is as a program manager, basically, and I've done chem bio defense systems for the Air Force, acquiring them for the Air Force for majority of my career. But now I'm a teacher, so I'm looking forward to getting back to the academy and continue teaching. So.
Yeah, and I am a full-time real estate professional as of like 7-8 months ago now. But before that, I was a program manager for a BioTech company over here in Cambridge. But even like a little snip before that, right? I had gotten my MBA with like my full ambition to leave the world of accounting, because once you get to know me, you're like, how, who, what, when, you know? Nice. And so, yeah, I got my MBA so that I could just do a new career path. And, you know, lo and behold, I got that career. And then shortly after, actually, like it took me about a year until my project ended. And then I went to the world of real estate. So that's a little bit about me.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, then as you guys have combined on your new road, can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So Michael and I are like owner and operators of apartment complexes all the way in the US. So we are doing like extreme long distance investing. And that actually all started because of COVID and all the lockdowns. So over here, we had 3 total, and the first one was a little over 100 days. So Michael and I were like sent home from work, and because he does wet lab research, it was almost like, okay, well, there's not a lot to do right now except for write, you know, because at that point it was his first year report. And so Michael and I were like, okay, what are we going to do during lockdown? Because we could only leave to work out, go to the grocery store, go to the pharmacy. So we decided to do a mini book club with each other. And one of those books was Multiple Streams of Income by Robert Allen. And the second section talks about real estate. So Michael is just like, hey, you should read this now. Like, just skip the first part. Like, let's just look at this. And then once we realized that you could do this from anywhere in the world, especially because everybody was on Zoom, you know, and virtual, then we dove right in. And that's when we decided that like a new path was in our journey.
Excellent.
Great.
You know, yeah. A couple crazy things. So number one, I've started listening to that book on podcast, and I think I need to figure out how to get to the second part, because the first part was making me snooze of that book. Yeah. And then another coincidence, actually, my wife's cousin, he's now retired, but my wife's cousin went to the Air Force. He retired as a full bird, and went to the Air Force Academy. So very cool. That's cool. Awesome that you're doing your PhD and going back, and thank you for your service. So excellent.
Absolutely. Yeah, I used to live just a few miles down from that in Colorado Springs. I lived real close to the Garden of the Gods there, for about a year. But beautiful area. And your holdings they're out in that general area, right? Oklahoma and Texas?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so we get back and be a little closer to them. Yeah, not quite as long distance from London.
Right? The flight won't seem as daunting every time.
Good deal. Yeah. Again, I didn't realize some of the lockdowns were 100 days. The first one. Oof, that's brutal.
The second one was 6 months.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It was fun.
Wow. Get to know each other really well, right?
We did.
Yeah. So as you think back to, maybe with some of your work in the commercial side, Suzy, or perhaps maybe Michael, with some of your teaching days or your active days before you were an instructor at the Air Force Academy. Can you think of a funny story, something that experienced along the way that made you think, oh boy, I got to change something. I got to do something different. Anything you can share?
Yeah, I do. So I am like a jokester, like by nature. And like at this, I guess at a accounting firm that I was working at, I was like, okay, we're going to have to like make this a little more lively today. And so I went in before everybody else did. And at my best friend's desk, I hid under her desk. So when she arrived, I grabbed her leg and scared her. So she screamed. The entire building, like it is what it felt like got up, because some people were in earlier just because like the clients in different time zones. And I ended up actually pretty much getting in trouble because of the scream. And I was like, this is, disruption. I was like, it was really just supposed to be for fun. I thought it was funny. She thought it was funny. Like my team knew it was funny because somebody was videoing it because they knew it was going on.
Right.
But like just from that, I was like, I think I'm just going to need out of the cubicle life because
right. Yeah. Lighten up, people. Lighten up.
Yeah. Once they evacuated the building.
No, I promise it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Suzy, here's another idea for the future, especially in an accounting firm. Just show up early and remove all the equal signs from all the keyboards in the building.
I like that. Yeah. That's a good one.
Well, Michael or Suzy, I know you guys were asking, like, what was a deciding factor that got you to change to head down the real estate path? You mentioned the book, Robert Allen's The Multiple Streams of Income, the idea. Was there just planning for the future, or was there anything as you're looking toward the 17 years? I don't know if you assume the 20-year commitments for the retirement from the Air Force and just what you're going to do afterwards, or kind of how did that come about, deciding factor to get into real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a couple things. Number one, like, after spending so much time together, Suzy and I, during the lockdowns, we realized like when I started going back to work, it was like kind of sad. Like I don't have a work buddy anymore, and like I'm going back to the lab, especially during COVID, like there's nobody else there. It's just like you by yourself because there's like shift work and weird restrictions and stuff like that. Anyways.
No one hiding under the desk to grab your leg.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
But there were a lot of times where I hid from him in the house and scared him.
She tried. However, I realized, I was like, I don't like this feeling. I don't want this to continue for a long period of time. I was like, I already knew that once I hit 20 years in the Air Force, that I wanted to exit, just because there's a lot of other things I want to do. I gave my time to the Air Force, and now I want to kind of focus on me and what I want to do with life. And that for us both, our main goal is to travel as to many countries as we can. Nice. And so once I retire, we want to not have a place to live, but in fact, just like kind of travel wherever and just live like 3 months here, 3 months there, 6 months there, wherever we plan on going, whatever we fancy, wherever we fancy going to, that's what we plan on doing. So we knew we needed to create some kind of passive income in order to support that lifestyle. And so right now, because we're both, I'm still working and she was working at the time, like, we're like, well, we can do this as a side gig. Like we can be active now to build up our income. And then we can use that income to then invest into some passive investments. And then we can start slowly building our passive investments up as I'm approaching retirement, and then slowly turn off the active side of things. Right. And so that was kind of what our plan was, and that's what we're still aiming to do now. So.
Yeah. And I was going to say another big reason too, is just like as a military spouse, with all of the moves, it creates almost like an attack on your identity. Like, cause when we first moved here, it was really difficult for me to get a job. And I've heard that from a lot of other people, right? That like, it's really hard to progress in any career if you're moving one into a different country, but two to different states. And so this really created like a lot of stability. So like a big part too is to let like other military spouses know that you can do this, like no matter where you live, whatever time zone you're in, like you can make it work so that you don't feel like that big break in your career every time you have to move.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, my wife's father was also career Air Force, and my mother-in-law moved with he was posted in Germany, and my mother-in-law was not real happy about that posting, and she refused to learn German. So she would pull my wife out of school. She was whatever grade school age, and she would pull my wife out of school, who of course had, kids absorb like sponges. So, she would be the translator in the grocery store and things like that. So, crazy, but yeah, I completely understand. You're right. It is hard to progress in a career path if you're constantly moving every couple of years, and that makes total sense. Actually, I thought of another coincidence. My brother's wife works at Fort Detrick in Maryland, so maybe a little bit of a close field to some of what you guys used to do. So yeah, interesting. Well, just let's keep going. So as you really started, again, planning ahead, looking ahead, changing where you're going and setting yourself up for the lifestyle you want to live is fantastic. I applaud you guys on that. That's got a lot of adventures coming your way. So that's great. But just as you really started moving in the direction of doing the real estate, were there some obstacles you encountered along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. There were several obstacles. I can share one at least. So we do multifamily syndications, and so we raise money from a lot of people. And so one of the big things is that we ran into initially was like, well, we can't meet our investors face to face, right? However, we were very fortunate that number one, we were very far away, so we couldn't like fly in to meet somebody for coffee and things like that, right? It was very cost prohibitive to do that. However, we were very fortunate because of COVID and everything, like everything kind of went virtual and online. So everybody knew what Zoom was, how to work it and things like that. So when you ask somebody, hey, you want to meet via Zoom, they're very up for it. And so like we do a majority of our investor calls now still via Zoom. And then we meet them in person whenever we're back in the area. That was an obstacle we had to face initially, but because of the silver lining, I guess, of COVID, we were able to overcome that.
Well, yeah, and that's a great point. And quite honestly, Bill and I run 2 monthly meetings, and we do this show. And we started the show during COVID, but at the same point in time, no, actually, we started right before COVID. We released early in COVID, and then. But our monthly meetings gravitated toward Zoom, of course. And then now that we're back in person, we still kept the hybrid model because we like the idea that we can connect with people that are not just in the room, they're anywhere. So I think that's just, obviously nobody wanted COVID to happen, but I do think that we've taken a lot of, the silver lining, like you said, out of it is that we can really connect better on a virtual session with somebody, and people accept it and understand it, and they're willing to do it, as you said. So yeah.
I think it's great that somebody in that area who is looking like to invest there but lives somewhere else, can like meet somebody in that area, right? And a partnership can form. I think that's like the greatest part, just is that like so many more options open up, which makes it easier for other people, to create the life that they want.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's somewhat ironic that some of the best, they're sometimes split, right? A lot of the best money centers are not the best place to invest, like the New York or the big metropolitan areas, just because the returns aren't there in some of the business unfriendly climate, we'll say, things where, but there are a lot of investors there that are looking to invest somewhere and looking for somebody to help them place money in, the Southeast or the Southwest or somewhere that has growing economy, but they're not really there. So it's nice that you can come together, like you said, that way. Well, what was one of the first victories as you look back, as you shifted to the real estate side in your new venture that you can recall? Was it raising for the first deal, or what was one of the first victories? Like you said, this is the right avenue we're on.
Bill, I think the answer to that, just closing our first deal was a victory, but like along the way, there was like multiple different victories as we got the first LOI accepted, right? That was a huge thing. And then we completed due diligence, we weren't able to be there physically in person for the first due diligence, but we made sure that we had the right questions prepared for our other partners who were on the ground, right? And so we did like basically like a virtual due diligence, but like we had our partners there as well. So that was a victory for us. And then like, of course, raising money for that first deal.
Yeah, like even having that first investor.
Having the first investor was a victory, right? But then closing out the deal and closing it and everything like that, and then operating it.
Nice.
There's been small victories along the way.
Nice. Yeah. So you guys had that little robot walking around with the little iPad on it. How did it go up and down the stairs? So I'm joking.
Oh.
Well, that was how you were represented. You had the little roving iPad, right?
No, seriously, yeah.
Yeah, FaceTime's great. So.
Yeah.
Michael has connections to the Air Force. He can use a drone. Lots of ways to do due diligence.
Nice. Perfect. All right. So on your new path, moving in the direction of real estate, and obviously you're not locked down right now, so hopefully you'll be able to do a little bit of travel while you're over in the UK and enjoy some of that European experience. But is there something funny that you can share along the way, perhaps in your real estate journey you've experienced?
No, I'd love to. So I've been going back and forth a lot. Well, now that everything's opened up, and like over here, you drive on the other side of the road than you do in the US. And so one day I have one of my property managers in the car and I'm the one driving. And we're like, I'm pretty sure we were driving to like a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and I'm driving down and I was like, okay, something internally feels off. Like, and I don't understand why. And like, I looked at her as she looked at me, and I said to her, like, am I on the wrong side of the road? While she's yelling at me, you're on the wrong side of the road, like as cars are coming at us. I guess that I think just was a super funny story, because I didn't think about how much I like relied on seeing the cars, or I don't even know if we do, when we see the constant path, like, of where people are going, what side of the road you're supposed to be on. And that got talked about within the property management company for a while. The whole thing was like, do not drive with Suzy if she's your property manager.
Yeah. Like, no. I'll drive. Yeah.
Right?
They just met you there from then on. They wouldn't ride.
I was like, I swear I'll take a wider turn next time to get in the right lane.
It is funny. I mean, like you said, England seems a little bit easier because of just the steering wheels on the opposite side of the car as well. But I've seen, like in the islands, sometimes they drive on what I say is the wrong side of the road, but the steering wheel is still, the American standard where it's on the left side. So it's really confusing that, that there's no, just physical clue when you get in, like, okay, this is different here. But it's interesting. Like, so the more you travel, and you guys are, I guess, going to see a lot of that in the future with all the travel, all the unique things.
The weirdest part is like the depth perception, right? Because like you're so used to being like, okay, I know how much I'm supposed to have on this side and this side. But then when you're driving, it's like, on the opposite side, you're like, wait a second, I feel squished. What's happening? Like, how much room do I have? It's like, I don't understand.
We all have minis, smart cars.
So let me make sure I've got this. I'm clear. So if you're in the UK right now, if you were actually in the US right now, you'd be on opposite sides of the screen, right?
Yeah.
Usually, and upside down.
That's Australia. That's right.
Wait, now you're messing with me.
Oh, we're going back.
Big conversion, yeah. Well, Michael and Suzy, where are you guys today in your journey on the real estate? You've got several properties, several units in Texas and Oklahoma. What are you thinking down the line? What's your plans?
Yeah, so we own like 5 apartment complexes now. One should be closing in June as well of this year. Another large one, which will put us over 500 units, which would be nice. But our goal is to kind of, Suzy and I, we think about like a number to get to, or assets under management number to get to, and things like that. We don't really have a specific unit count that we want to aim for, and we don't have a set, target assets under management per se. But at the same time, like, what we want to do is provide value to our investors and our residents at the same time. And like, whatever that means, like taking our time. Yes, we want to make sure that we want to get enough properties to be able to offer multiple offerings a year to our investors. But at the same time, we're not trying to rush into something just to get an offer to our investors, right? To get some deal under contract. So then we have something to offer investors. Like, so we've also considered like bringing funds to other operators as well. And we're just taking our time, making sure that we have the underwriting correctly, do the due diligence properly and things like that. And then the offerings that we do offer our investors are of the highest quality possible. So we're not trying to race to get to some number. But we know eventually, I mean, we have long-term goals, like we'll be close to 50 million assets under management after this next closing. We'd like to double that. And then get to, you know, over 1,000 units as well. But we're not putting a time limit on that or anything like that. We'll get there when we get there. We'll get there when we're ready to get there. So,
Yeah.
Well, it's quality over quantity, right? I mean, like you said, for building a long-term business model, that's the only way to do it, right? You can't a flash in the pan to, you know, scale. Like, so if you put bad deals out, then that's, you know, that's going to stay with you. So you want to make sure, like you said, you do the due diligence and build it the correct way over time, and you'll have loyal repeat customers, and that's great.
Yeah, because even with the investors, right? Like even beyond that, like if we were to get a deal, and because we have a property management company, if everyone then who lived there, right, all the residents are like, oh, like they don't know if it's a bad deal or not, but they can know if the property isn't being taken care of. So then with that, if the reviews are bad, then our property manager is also part of those reviews. Like we don't want like to ever have that kind of a trickle anywhere because we didn't take our time or we weren't patient enough to, you know, care for each property the way it needs to be cared for.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, makes sense. So, Suzy and Michael, is there something that you can share that you do perhaps in your real estate world that, you know, is a way that you try to give back to the community? Something you do maybe personally, maybe through your community, something like that? Anything you share?
Yeah, well, I guess there's two. I would say, so one is kind of a little bit bigger, but Michael and I like started a meetup as well. And it's like for people living overseas who want to invest in the US, and a lot of them all are in the military. And so it's really nice whenever like we get a fresh new face and they're like, oh, I thought I was the only one. Like we think that's really cool just because even if Michael and I can't help them, we know that we can connect somebody with somebody else somewhere, right? Because Michael and I literally were like Zoom junkies for a while. But then another one that I love to do within Tulsa itself is that there is this like restaurant juicery cafe, and they have like a pay it forward wall, and you can buy like a hot meal, a smoothie, a juice, or a coffee. And so whenever I go into Tulsa, I like to fill up the entire wall because then like it's cool to be able to see like people come in and be excited that they get a meal. Like I didn't expect to feel the way that I did. I was like, you know, I'm just going to fill up the wall. This is one of the easier ways I can give back. And then when I saw people get excited and then even call their like friends or whatever, like, oh my gosh, there's extra meals, like come meet me. I was like, wow, this is neat. You know,
Very cool.
Yeah, I was like, that's cool. And so like kind of big picture and then bringing it all the way back down to Tulsa.
Excellent.
That's great. Yeah. Was there something you've recently implemented in your businesses that have allowed you to scale as you're growing out? That's been a benefit you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing that's helped us, you know, kind of keep track of everything and also scale is just using tech more. And so like one of the things we do is we use Asana. So it's a project management software tool. So my training in project management has been on like MS Project, right? Which is like very cumbersome and not very user-friendly. And anyways, I'm not talking bad about Microsoft, but at the same time, like you don't need Gantt charts and things like that to do daily items for the most part. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is like, we use Asana. There's Asana out there. There's money.com. There's Trello, all these different project management software tools. But the great thing is like we can share that with the co-GPs on our deal if we have any, all the general partners basically, and the management team as well, and our vendors. And then we can also, you know, so we're all on the same page about it. So like everything for bids gets uploaded there. We can approve things through there. There's a record of everything. We basically use that to communicate with our property manager and on-site manager on a daily, if not like hourly basis, really to like really see what's going on with properties, like almost at real time, which is really, really cool. And so that's helped us keep track of everything that's going on all of our properties. And it's just been like a really, really cool tool. And our property management company loved it so much that they've actually implemented it across their entire company now, which is really cool. So
yeah, like it keeps you out of your email. If somebody has a question about a bid, right? They don't have to like reach out to another person on the general partnership team. They can just find the answer themselves. Because, as we mentioned before, like we all bring different investors in. And so it's not like, our co-GP Camilla or Marcus has to reach out to Suzy or Michael and then wait until they respond to get back to them about this. It's like, oh, look at Asana right there. And so that's been really awesome.
Great. Yeah, we've used it on an earlier project as well. Yeah, we like the software management. Yeah.
Good.
Excellent.
Good deal. So Suzy and Michael, as you think about what you've done, is there some advice you can share with somebody that's considering making a path change?
I mean, I'm just going to have to say, like, take the leap. A lot of people like have to have a certain number, that they've already made or whatever in order to leave. But I'm telling you, like, when you get that 8 hours back to like work on like what you truly love or like what you're taking the leap towards, everything changes. Like you will go from 0 to 100 much faster. Because at the pace before, right? Say you were working for a little bit in the morning or a little bit at night. Majority of the time, that's not your prime time. You know what I mean? Or you didn't get to spend all of your prime time working on that project. And so once you give yourself the opportunity to actually work on it during like your prime time, everything just, it's so much more fun. So yeah, just don't overthink the number, right? If you've saved money and you know that you can take the leap and not be in a position where you're not in anything for a little bit, or you're not technically like bringing in an income, like you will be okay, right? Like you've wrote down the pros and cons. You already know the calculated risks. You're not going to go out and buy a new Porsche. Like that's not going to happen. You're not going to lose all your money. And so just do it. It's fun.
Good advice. Yeah. It's definitely, there are so many people that think that, I need to have that giant nest egg. I need to, and again, don't get me wrong. Absolutely planning is required. You got to kind of go into this with, being smart about it. But at the same point in time, there's so many people that just are too afraid. And I empathize, but at the same point in time, there's so many people that are too afraid to take that step. And I agree with you. You got to do it. Just jump in.
And tell people, right? Because like once you tell people, like you've not just made a commitment inside your head, you've made the commitment to somebody else who can hold you accountable for it.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, so we talk about analysis paralysis sometimes, who, they study and try to get something down, but you'll never know it all, right? I mean, you have to make that leap, like you said, at some point, and then you'll learn so much more that first year of doing that full time and being totally immersed in it than you ever would just reading textbooks. And I love study, I love reading. You should, like you said, have a good background going in, but to delay that indefinitely till you think you know everything, which will never happen. I mean, that point. Yeah,
totally. And that's the most fun part, is that you then are constantly learning.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Suzy and Mike, what's the best way for listeners to learn more about what you're doing, some deals you're involved in, what you're looking at, future projects, some of your meetup groups?
Yeah. So the best way, and this is really cool. Like we didn't get to share too much about this, but like Suzy and I's like main goal is like, we focus on like a different ROI, and that's return on impact. We kind of mentioned a little bit. We said like we're looking for good opportunities to provide for investors, but also, we want to be able to take care of the residents. So that's one of the biggest things. Like we put the residents first and then the returns follow. So that's a big thing with return on investment. So if you want to read more about like investing with purpose, you can go to adventurousrei.com/impact, and you can find that guide there and learn more about that. But if you just go on our website, adventurousrei.com/info, there's a landing page. And you can reach out to us. You can read more about return on impact there, and you can find out about our meetup there and our YouTube channel and our podcast and everything like that.
Nice. That's great. Absolutely. And we'll put links to the show in the show notes below to all those sites. So make it easier for listeners to find you guys. Excellent. Well, Michael, Suzy, we really appreciate you being on the Road Less Traveled show. Enjoy the conversation and want to wish you continued success.
Thanks so much, Bill. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we do. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Really want to thank you both for being on. Suzy Sevier and Michael Barnhart, thanks for being on. We'd also like to thank Park Capital Partners that sponsors this show. And we really want to thank our listeners. Thank you for listening. Please continue to give us 5-star ratings so we can bring you more great content like Suzy and Michael today. And we also want to remind everybody that Park Capital Partners sponsors this show. Please reach out to us to learn more about what we do. We also want to remind folks that we created the Park Capital Partners Foundation. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. And when investors invest with us, we make a donation to a charity that the investor cares about to honor that investor. We give them a list of 15 to choose from. And then finally, we have the Park Capital Value Add Fund, and we are under contract with an acquisition right now. So please reach out. And thanks again for folks for tuning in. And remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action. Thanks for joining.